If you still have time to make some trades in your league, we're going to help you out right now on Fantasy Football Today Express. Welcome to the show. We're looking at the most traded players in CBS Sports Leagues. I'm Adam Azer with Dave Richard. And the number one most traded player is an interesting one. It's Kareem Hunt with Isaiah Pacheco hoping to play this week. What do you think about the Chiefs' backfield, Dave?
I think when Pacheco comes back, he'll get eased into a role, with the idea being that the Chiefs use him more, provided that he's the same guy, when the playoffs, the NFL playoffs start, not the fantasy playoffs. So there's a lot of time between now and then. This is week 12. Everyone knows the season's got another 7 weeks to go. So we'll see how much work he'll get. And I'm curious to see if Kareem Hunt's just going to become, a 6-touch per game guy for Kansas City. We've seen players come back from broken legs before and not look the same. Yeah. So I understand why people are excited about Isaiah Pacheco and why they think he's going to be a great fantasy asset down the stretch. And it can happen. But I think Kareem Hunt, at least in the short term, is still worth starting in fantasy. Love his matchup this week against the Panthers for obvious reasons. By the time we get to like week 14, week 15, I don't know if we'll be starting Kareem Hunt with the same enthusiasm.
I couldn't want him off my team anymore, honestly. I mean, in talking trade, like if I have him on my roster, maybe I can get another week out of him, maybe. But I'm surprised that Pacheco practiced last week, right? They activated him, I think, 2 weeks ago. They took him off IR. He practiced last week. He's looking like he's going to play this week. It's kind of an earlier return than I expected, so it makes me a little bit more optimistic for him, at least for his workload. Kareem Hunt, I think, is going to have very little value. He is not running the ball well. He's just running it a lot.
True.
He needs a ton of carries, and he needs them inside the 2-yard line. So I can't imagine trading for Kareem Hunt right now. If you're the Pacheco manager and you want to trade a guy like Blake Corum for Kareem Hunt or something like that I would get.
Sure.
No thanks for me.
No, he's had single-digit value in the trade chart for many weeks because of this, and because public perception is exactly how you feel. And I'm not here to say that Kareem Hunt's going to be fine. Don't worry about him. We'll be starting him for sure. I just said a couple of weeks from now, who knows?
Right.
But could there be a split where Pacheco doesn't get goal line work and Kareem Hunt maybe even plays on some third downs? Who the heck knows? He hasn't really been already, so I'd be surprised to see that. But maybe Kareem Hunt takes a little bit more work and a little bit of those valuable touches away from Pacheco until the Chiefs are really sure that Pacheco's good to go from any down, any distance.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Tyreek Hill is number 2 on the most traded list, and he is your sell high.
Because he, even though he had a great game against Las Vegas, it still wasn't like elite by Tyreek standards. Okay, when Tyreek was a potential top 3 pick in our fantasy drafts back in August and September. And has he met that expectation? No. And he scored in the last 2 weeks. Has he met the expectation in the last 2 weeks? I'd still say no. 3 games since week 1 with 7 or more targets. I think that's the number. It might be 8, but obviously he doesn't have a lot of high target games. He has 1 catch since week 1 for 30 yards, none more than that. And the touchdowns have been nice lately, but they've kind of been at a premium over the course of the season. So I'd be a little nervous about Tyreek Hill and selling high on him, getting something really good in exchange for him, turning him into Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker, even Kyron Williams. Kyron hasn't been hot lately, but I would make that move just to get Tyreek off the team.
Man, that is wild. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 straight games without a catch longer than 30 yards. That's
not Tyreek.
But now I'm looking at it, and he actually, just seeing this for the first time, the last 4 games of 2023, he did not have a catch longer than 25 yards. That's surprising.
That is surprising.
Then he had a 53-yard catch in the playoffs as part of only 62 yards against the Chiefs. Okay, next up on the most traded list is Tyrone Tracy Jr. How do you feel about him with a new quarterback?
I think the Giants are going to try and run the ball more. I don't think they want to put the game in Tommy DeVito's hands. They didn't last year. He didn't even average. I don't think he averaged even 25 pass attempts per game last year with the Giants. And some of that might be because when he dropped back, he was sacked, or he ran around the pocket and he got sacked then. I do think his offensive line will be better now than it was then. But I also think that the Giants' run game is better I don't know if it's better now because he had Saquon Barkley for some of those games, but I think just having Tyrone Tracy and what he shows, it's better than it was at the beginning of the year, simply because Tracy's gotten acclimated to the NFL game and he's played well, especially in favorable matchups. I would argue that he has another favorable matchup this week. And Tracy, as long as he's not benched for the fumble that cost them the win against Carolina 2 weeks ago, as long as that doesn't happen, I think Tyrone Tracy can be a good fantasy running back rest of the way. I'd rather have him than Kareem Hunt. I don't think that's speaking out of school. And I think his value could be close to Pacheco's as we sit here now, because we don't know when Pacheco will be back in the full swing of things. But obviously, once Pacheco is in the full swing of things, he would be better than Tyrone Tracy.
We're going to take a quick break, come back and look at many more. We'll go quickly on many more players on the most traded list. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today Express. All right, just give me quick thoughts on all these guys. Ready?
Sure.
Nick Chubb is number 4 on the most traded list.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get much for Chubb right now. Good efficiency against New Orleans, but not a lot of opportunity. When the Browns are trailing, he's not playing, and they're going to trail a lot.
DeAndre Hopkins, number 5.
I think a disappointing game last week, along with the fact that they're trying to get Xavier Worthy going, and I think they'll accomplish that this week against Carolina, makes me nervous about the long-term outlook for Hopkins. He's probably going to be a low-end wide receiver 3, if that, rest of season.
CeeDee Lamb, number 6 on the most traded list.
You got to feel good about the number of targets he had and the numbers that he gave you on Monday against Houston. That's probably going to be the expectation for him the rest of the season. That's a borderline top 12-ish type of fantasy wide receiver in PPR, maybe closer to 15 in non-PPR.
Ramondre Stevenson. Jamie, on the show that we just did, the hour-long show, he said, some of these guys who are playing through injuries haven't been playing that well, but we did mention Ramondre Stevenson, who's struggled since missing a game, I think, with a foot injury. He's 7th on the most traded list.
On the plus side, he's getting a lot of playing time and he's getting a lot of run. And when game script is favorable, you know that he's going to get the ball. And the Patriots offense is getting better for what it's worth, but I still think his value is pretty low, maybe a borderline RB2.
Marvin Harrison Jr. is 8th.
I would buy into Marvin Harrison Jr. If I were to think about it a little more, and I probably should have said this on the main show, he's not a buy low candidate. I just don't know how low that price tag is because he did okay in his last game. I do think the Cardinals will figure things out coming out of the bye, and we'll see a rookie bump for him in the late third of the season.
Going to read a few questions here. Which players would you trade for Mike Evans? So of the guys I just listed, obviously we would trade Kareem Hunt. We would trade Nick Chubb. We would trade Hopkins.
I would trade almost every. I don't even know if there was a name that you gave me that I wouldn't trade straight.
Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison Jr.
No, I think Evans comes back from his injury and he lights it up. Remember, he's coming back. Chris Godwin isn't. So he's got a chance to really see his targets swell up and get a lot of good numbers from Baker Mayfield. And that's a team that's still going to throw the ball a good amount of the time.
Dan is trading Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, and Jake Ferguson for Ken Walker, Deebo Samuel, and Evan Ingram.
No, not even close to enough.
Really?
Not even. Read it one more time.
So you're trading Bijan, best player in the deal, Bucky Irving, and Jake Ferguson. You're getting Ken Walker, Deebo Samuel, and Evan Ingram.
I'd rather have Bijan.
All right. It's a big tight end upgrade, but okay.
I don't know how big of a tight end upgrade that is.
Ferguson to Ingram? I think it's
I don't know. I don't think it's that.
I mean, I'm assuming that Trevor Lawrence is coming back. I probably shouldn't be doing that.
You shouldn't, but if he does, then yeah, that would help Evan Ingram quite a bit.
Jerry Jeudy, Jamison Williams, and Alexander Madison for David Montgomery.
So that's the type of move you make to upgrade your team if you're headed toward the fantasy playoffs and you want a stud running back. It's a lot to pay, but that's exactly the type of move that I would recommend.
Who would you want to get for Chase Brown?
I've got a strong opinion on Chase Brown. I think he's the main running back for one of the best offenses in the league, and I think he'll play for the rest of the season. So when you go to the trade chart on CBSSports.com, you'll see he's top 15 on the list. So
at running back or overall?
At running back. So
honestly, Dave, I think he's top 5-ish.
He might be. I might be selling him short, in which case you should go and take advantage of that. And yeah, we said it on the show. We said it on this show. I'd rather have him than Tyreek Hill.
And Joe Mixon has these horrible playoff matchups. So if you wanted to get out of Joe Mixon, you get Chase Brown and a starter somewhere.
That's good.
You could do that. And obviously, if you do it this week to the Chase Brown manager who needs a win, then look, am I overstating? Because obviously, Chase Brown's on a bye and Mixon is not. Then you can really make a killing. You just got to get that second player that's really good. But am I overstating it with Chase Brown? I just don't see what's going to hold him back.
No, and the problem is that there are a lot of other running backs that are in a similar situation to Chase Brown, where they're getting a lot of work, and a lot of them are certainly more accomplished than Chase Brown. But we've been talking about him all year, Adam. He's really come through.
I couldn't justify him over Mixon, McCaffrey, Achane,
Henry, Barkley, Bijan.
Right.
Okay,
So
Breece Hall.
Yeah, I absolutely think he could be better than Breece Hall.
I think Breece Hall carries more value right now. I think Gibbs carries more value. We're getting closer when we talk about Kyron Williams, Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Kenneth Walker, and Alvin Kamara.
Absolutely. I think he might.
That's the kind of range that Chase Brown is creeping into.
Yeah. So and this thing, if he's 15, if he's 5, it may not be that big of a difference. It might just be touchdown luck or something between all of these running backs. There's a lot of really good running backs, but the bottom line is Chase Brown is in that group.
Sure.
You should value him that way.
If we're going to make the argument that trading Joe Mixon is a good idea because he's got a tough schedule, we could also make the exact same argument for Chase Brown, because his schedule rest of the season, and especially in the fantasy playoffs, in the fantasy strength of schedule that I build each week, it's not very good. In fact, it's bottom 5 for Chase Brown in the fantasy playoffs.
Interesting. The saving grace for him, though, is he has 19 catches in his last.
Oh, there's no question. Right. The in his favor is he's shown us that he can be an efficient player, and he's going to get a ton of work, including catches. So that puts him right into that top 12-ish range.
But that's a great point. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Dave Richard. And
thank you, Adam.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening. Talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today Express.